over to you, ma'am.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this month's book review, Lora Book Club October book review, Great by Choice, Jim Collins. So just to kickstart thing, to start off, I think this book, I'd heard so many people saying they read it, they were saying so many good things about it. And you know me and FOMO, I was like, I'm gonna read it too. So I suggested that we do it this month. And when I went to watch it, I'm like, this is a very big book because I've been really struggling to read, hey, but this one, because I am here, I had to read and finish it. So before I start, have we all read the book? Can I get a thumbs up so to see who's read the book and who hasn't read the book?
Where are the emojis?
Angie has, Dr. Roche has, Blondie?
I'm not so sure if her sound is connected.
Okay. So it's at least it's 3 of us for now. I don't know if you can give us a thumbs up, and Fireflies, note taker. Yeah, but anyway, so for me, like I've been saying, I've been really struggling to read, and I'm very particular with what I read. So I got this book, and the first thing that I did before, I think the thing that attracted me to the book was the title in itself, Great by Choice. You know, choices, I like having a choice. You know, I like being able to decide what to do and what not to do. So that was the first thing that caught my attention, besides the fact that people just say it's a good book. So then I went on to look what choice means. It's just basically an act of choosing between 2 or more possibilities. And it's a noun, it's an option, an alternative, a possibility, a solution, an answer, a way out. Those are the synonyms for the word choice. And I was like, great, I like being able to choose. I don't like being put in a corner or being told what to do and what not to do, right? And then I went straight into the book. And then the first line, I'm going to be opening the book and going to my notes, so please bear with me. I hope that's okay, that's allowed. First line, page 1, it says we cannot predict the future, but we can create it. And I was like, this is fantastic news. I love this. Let's keep on reading. And I think I must just mention earlier on, I really like the way it's written, the writing style. It's simple and it's easy to read, minus the things that threw me off were the numbers, the graphs, the tables. And I was like, what is this, an economics textbook? What is this? But I was like, you know what? Instead of getting overwhelmed, let me just choose what I can take, which is the text. So I read along. And I think this is one of the first books. I usually don't highlight books or write on books because books are expensive. But this one, there are lines, and I did a lot of highlighting and underlining. So then the first, so to summarize, chapter 1, thriving in uncertainty. I mean, as we all know, we cannot predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, come February 2010, we didn't know we'd still be wearing masks in public almost 2 years later, right? No one knew that we'd be locked in our houses in Botswana. I'm in Gaborone, Botswana, for those who don't know, that we'd even need permits to go buy bread. You know, those lockdowns that were just so horrible. And we cannot create the future, but we cannot predict it rather, but we can create it. You know, we can't predict with certainty the twists and turns that come with life, and the future is unknown, and it's neither good or bad. It's really what you decide what the future is going to be. And then when we turn to page 2, there's a quote that I really like, and I'm going to read it. It says, we don't choose study questions, they choose us. Sometimes one of the questions that grabs us around, sometimes the questions will grab us around the throat and growl. I'm not going to release my grip and let you breathe until you answer me. And I made a note, I'm like, this sounds a lot like life. You know, life just happens to us. Life will grab you by the neck, and you have to like you have to decide, you have to answer to life basically, and you have a choice to decide what, it's neither good or bad like that saying, but you decide, it's up to you to decide if it's a good thing or if it's a bad thing. And then as we continue, it says, and then he went on to talk about, we'll go deeper into companies that made it, the 10Xers, you know, the great companies. And I also like the comparison between the companies that had the same circumstances. I mean, I guess like they, going back to the life example that I just gave, we are all given 24 hours. We all have 24 hours in a day. You decide what you do with your 24 hours. So I was like, yes, let's keep on going. And then he talked about the 10X's companies, the companies that were high performers. And for instance, he gave an example of, I'm sure if I'm not mistaken, this book was a 9 to 10 year research. I think that's what I think I gathered from the book, that it took them, because it's not just Jim, there's Morten as well. It took them 9 to 10 years to write all of this. So there's a lot of information. It's not, for at some point it felt like information overload, but it was also quite manageable, you know. And then when you go to page 9, there were graphs. I decided to ignore the graphs because they didn't make sense. Those things that look like those heartbeat machines, I was like, I'm not getting involved. I don't want to confuse myself and then end up not reading the book. And then the part where he was talking about that the Southwest Airlines in America, how they were able to keep thriving despite the odds that were stacked up against them. You know, they were the best in the industry, despite the fact that there were fuel shortages, there were strikes, they faced bankruptcy a number of times, and the 9/11 that helped. So then the question would then be, if Southwest Airlines and Pacific Southwest Airlines, why was the other one able to thrive and the other one not able to thrive? And then he went on to say that greatness is not just a business quest, it's a human quest, you know, and the only way to predict the future, like I already mentioned, is to create it. That's a quote on page 12. And then at the end of page 12, he says, as he's talking, it's a part about the airlines, and he says, as the influential management thinker, Peter Drucker thought, the best, perhaps even the only way to predict the future, again, is to create it. So wrapping up chapter 1, basically, you have a choice to decide what you want to do with your future or not. And then we move on to chapter 2, which is the 10Xer companies. And he went on into great detail about that. And the part that I really enjoyed was that expedition between Hansen and Scott, you know. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm such a Scott in life, you know, when now you're taking score of your own life and you're like, what the hell have I been doing, you know? And I just really like how two people faced the same circumstances, but one was able to thrive, to take his summit and go back home on the day he had written on his journal that he's going to make it home. And then Scott and his team, they didn't even make it, you know, they both died up there, which is unfortunate. And I really like the comparison that he made. I also did my own table there. And then Amundsen was 29, Scott was 43, right? And he says the Amundsen camp was victorious because even before he went on this thing, I think he liked challenging himself and seeing how much he's capable of doing. You know, even before that thing with the snow, he cycled for 20 miles. He even at some point, I was like, this guy is insane. He ate raw dolphin meat to see what would happen should, you know, he gets stranded and run out of everything. And if he got shipwrecked, he saw whether or not it was, dolphin meat was consumable, and it was. And he even went on a pilgrimage with the Eskimos to study their way of life, you know, and he prepared thoroughly. That's a lesson. And he marked the way adequately. He had 3 tons of supply for one man in his team, and he designed the entire journey systematically and reducing big chances of failing. And he embraced the possibility as well as the same forces of failure and succeeding. Like he basically planned, you know. And then Scott, on the other hand, went for convenience. He didn't even try to see how much he can or his team can be able to withstand the odds that were against him. He chose convenience and comfort. He chose ponies over dogs. He even, like with Amundsen, at some point he had decided that he's going to feed the weaker dogs to the stronger dogs to keep them going. But this one, I mean, ponies can't even eat, those things don't eat meat. So what was going to happen when they run out of food? And they were exhausted. He was complaining the entire time about everything that was happening to them. So, and I was like, I looked back and I was like, but this sounds a whole lot like me. I don't plan. And then I expect things to work out the same way. And then concluding that, it just basically says, these two guys had same circumstances but very different behavior. So again, it goes back to the fact that this is life. You need to choose how you want your life to be, and you can be great even in those choices. And then you go to page 3, which is chapter 3. And then the part there's a lot that stood out for me. So I was picking out things that were like really amazing. And just to backtrack a bit, I'm going to read Amundsen's philosophy, which is also something that I really, really, really liked, and I'm going to live by. He says that you don't wait until you are in an unexpected storm to discover that you need more strength and endurance. You don't wait until you are shipwrecked to determine if you can eat a raw dolphin. You don't wait until you are in the Antarctic journey to become a super skier and a dog handler. You prepare with intensity all the time so that when all conditions turn against you, you can draw from a deep reservoir of strength. I really like this. And I'm like, you prepare for things that might happen, not as and when they happen. That's when you think, okay, where is the raw dolphin when you are stuck? But once you're already in that situation, you're already prepared for that. So you're able to go and thrive. So then we go to page 21, where now he talks about the 10x leaders and the sort of like how they, I don't know if I should say their leadership style or their way of leading. And then he goes on to explain the phonetic discipline, empirical creativity, and productive paranoia. Basically, with phonetic discipline, it's just consistency of action. Your values, your goals, your performance, your standards, and your methods. You are relentless in how you do those, and you are unbending with your focus. And another example is Scott, who arrived back safely to the day he had planned to return, because he had already planned that, and he had made contingency plans of how he would address a certain situation if something would go south. And then with empirical creativity, this one is evidence-based. And the example that they gave was of Andy Grove, the man who, when was told there was a cancer scare, or there was prostate cancer that was caught, and what he did was, instead of just accepting what the diagnosis was and what the treatment plan would be, he decided to take a step back and do thorough research on that, you know. And I was thinking also to myself, when COVID hit, the only thing that I researched, I got vaccinated 2 months ago, and the thing that I only did was I researched what to do with when the side effects come. I didn't really sit and read about what's in the actual vaccine, you know? And I'm like, Shama, you're just not gonna sit there and get vaccinated. But I'm like, you know what, this thing has killed billions of people, including a very close cousin of mine 2 months ago yesterday. And I'm like, who am I? you know. But the lesson that I've learned here is that to sit down and read up on things and research. What Andy Grove did was he researched the articles that were written for medical scientists by medical scientists. He delved into the data, he interrogated it thoroughly, and he tested the tests, you know. And then when he went back to his neurologist, he was informed. So I think we need, for me, what I learned is I need to be better informed about, I mean, science is science, but I also need to be knowledgeable and not just take things for what I'm being told. And then what I like is that he says he did his own cross-disciplinary work on his own. And then he says at the end, I decided to bet on my own chats. You know, that's the choice that we were talking about. He was told, you have a prostate, whatever, scare, cancer. And then instead of, like I already mentioned, not to repeat, he didn't just say, okay, let's start radiation or let's start chemo, but he sat down and researched and researched and researched. And then whatever decision he made, it was an informed one, and he owned it, right? And then with productive paranoia, there's a comparison. And the thing that I also really appreciated as I read along was the comparison, how he made comparisons between companies. And then with productive paranoia was that comparison between Microsoft and Apple, how Bill Gates was just a very worrisome person who was just worried about everything. And then with Scully from Apple was a very optimistic person who, like Microsoft had Dr. Doom, who just gave them all the possible things that could possibly go wrong. And then with Apple guys, they had effective action, which they did over just being paranoid. And then with the productive paranoia here, the leaders here are very vigilant and they're attuned to threats and changes in the environment, especially when things are going well. They're in tune, you know, they're not only tuned up when things are going wrong. And yeah. So, and then other thing, next chapter 4, that I really, really liked and I've started incorporating in my life is the 20-mile march. You know, I've decided everything that I'm doing, it's task, creativity, even reading. For me to finish this book, I'd set my timer to 20 minutes. If I don't stop within 20 minutes, and then I'll do like an hour, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes. And then again, going back to Manson, they did say that you do things in 20 minutes. Today, even if the weather is nice, if you, the guy that walked from San Francisco to Maine, I forgot the name, but what he did was he walked in 20 minutes. Even on days when the weather was good, after the 20-minute mile plan, he would stop and rest, as opposed to saying, okay, today I'm going to walk 4 hours and then exhaust himself. So the 20-minute mile plan, in essence, is about consistency, whether you like it or not. I've also started walking and running at 5:30 in the morning. And this week was very cold, but I was like, you have to do it. You don't do it because today is cold or it's not cold. You do it because you are committed and you are consistent. And then the fire, bullets, and cannonballs chapter. Again, the bullets are you look at the low cost and the low risks in the bullets are what will cause the low destruction, and then they can be calibrated and uncalibrated. And then the cannonballs are those things that will just collapse the whole building. And then the leading above death, it's basically you build your cash reserves and you are bound to risk. You zoom out and you zoom in. You take a step back to see what's working and what's not working. And then the last but not least is the SMAC. I really like this one as well. Your processes, this one, I think if you're running a business, you can tie it in with your operations management. Basically, your specific, your methodical and consistent plans. And then the SW Airline CEO saying it's basically doing the same thing that you were doing and doing it over, that thing that you're doing very well, and doing it over and over and over again. And again, it's a healthy approach to things. It's a durable operating practice, and it's, again, it ties in with the the productive paranoia. And then I struggled with the return on luck. I feel like the chapter was long, was too repetitive. And I felt like you could have said the same thing in 2 pages. And then let me just open, there's a quote that I like there in page 174. Yes, I'm gonna read it and then I will be done. It says, if you stay in the game long enough, good luck tends to return, but if you get knocked out, you'll never have the chance to be lucky again. Lucky favors the persistent, but you can be persistent only if you survive. So I think basically in a nutshell, it's about consistency and doing it at a pace, at a certain pace. And then once you are consistent, whatever comes your way, you are able to survive, and you have a choice. You either sink or swim, basically. I think that's it from my side. Comments, opinions, who think about what? I think Angie, you said you had something that stood out for you as well. Do you wanna start off?
Yes, sure. By the way, if you guys don't know, I'm in Orapa as well.
Oh, hi.
I'm an Orapian now, 10 years in Orapa, basically. I was going to say, yeah, there were a few points. I was just drafting the most important. I'd like to take application from lessons from each chapter, yes? So basically what stuck with me, there were a few lessons, but there was a lot of consistency, and something that I've been meditating a lot funny enough, the last weeks, I've been called, or I don't know, I feel minister in my heart about consistency. You know, we try to, I think the world is so fast, and then even on the internet, we get the tendency of seeing people and entrepreneurs, and they promise you, I'll teach you, I'll coach you to make 6 figures in 2 weeks. And I mean, people are busy trying to get fast results, but they forget the power of consistency, yes? And also the self-discipline, because we were talking about the characteristics of the CEOs, self-discipline, being focused, and the 20 miles story, you know, like making small changes over a periodic time, repetitive, it really, it's changing, you know, it takes you to the results. It is in this life, I believe there's no fast remedies, there's no magical remedies, there's no easy things. You know, I usually say that easy things and fast things, that's the same way that they go. I think everything that is worthy, it needs to be built over time and with consistency, you know, it makes you better and stronger. So today I was saying it resonated with me because I knew we had this meeting for the book club, and then I had around the same time my workout, you know, because I also started working out last week. And I said, no, I'm not gonna do it because the excuse, I have to be ready for the book club. And then I felt like, what about consistency? What about of self-discipline, you know? So I kind of pushed towards that, to put it into application to that lesson that I learned. Let me see in my notes if I see anything else worth mentioning. I also loved, especially from the first chapter, Thriving in Uncertainty. Well, basically this book is spot on, you know, because as you were mentioning the name, by choice. Everything that we do, it's a choice. It takes choices. We are the result of our choices. And what I loved about the whole topic, but it was very on point about the uncertainty. We have lived the last 2 years, basically, or 18 months in uncertain times. And it is true, I have seen cases in which some companies are thriving. I have seen it even in my own company. But it's about it's not about luck, because it was very important for me and eye-opening that all companies, there was a comparison, all companies they were presented the same opportunities and the same lucky instances. They had the same amount of lucky opportunities and bad luck opportunities. They were the same, but why some thrived and why the other ones didn't? It's because as an entrepreneur, but anyways, as a person in any stage of your life, it's about holding. What do you do with that opportunity, grasping the opportunity, right? What do you do with it? So for me also, that was quite opening, because people talk about luck, and we tend to see successful people out there and, oh, they are so lucky. No, actually, it's about what they get to do when the opportunities arise, and opportunities are out there for everyone. Yes, every time that you open your eyes and there's a new day and you see the sun, opportunities are there. What do you do with them? It's up to you. So it's by choice. So yeah, I think that's from my side. I would like to hear the other participants. Thank you so much. You did great on your presentation.
Thank you so much.
You had a good choice for book. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much for your contribution as well. I'd like to welcome those who just joined us, and Deborah Subudi, are you with us? Okay, KG.
It's KG, yes.
KG. Tembile. Oh, KG. Hi, KG.
Oh, okay. Okay, so must I tell my...
Yes. Hi. What
Yes,
is your... Hi, have you read the book? What's your take on the book and your favorite quote from the book?
Okay, Jamila, yes,
Hi.
I read portions of the book. I didn't finish. Yeah, but like the previous speaker just spoke now, like great by choice, I actually picked it up as she was mentioning it. Greatness is by choice. What I went to was particularly within the first few chapters, I've read particularly Manabuaka of English when he spoke about the two guys that were going on an expedition, and you were able to pick up the difference in preparation and in terms of the preparation in anticipation, particularly from one guy, to the extent that he ended up eating raw dolphin meat or something, and he was able to gauge on how the distance that he's gonna walk on each day in terms of conscious about the energy preservation, studied how the Eskimos operated and stuff. Now, when you bring that up into today's whatever, is that we live in the very same environment, everybody, and some people are still able to thrive or still progress without any hassles. It goes back to the choices that we made. I wrote a quote actually. There's a I think on page 22 there's a part where they spoke about discipline. I think where it says discipline in essence is consistency of action. Actually, like that, consistency of action, consistency of values, consistency of long-term goals, consistency of performance standards, consistency of method, consistency over time. You understand? And from that, I also loved the within the first chapter when he was speaking about how they chose which stories to follow, and over a period, only to come explain that it may happen that by the time you see this book, the dynamics have changed, and saying this company doesn't deserve to be part of the 10Xers and stuff. So I loved how they put that layout before so that we understand how we're going. But at the end of the day, what I can say for me thus far is that discipline is what was consistent. And there was nothing also that was categorically that set other companies apart over than they just did what they knew worked over time. It was not that, oh, these ones were the special breed, these ones were more innovative, these ones were thinking and making decisions quicker than everybody else. They just stuck to what they knew has always worked. That's what I can say about the book, because I didn't finish it, so I'll end it here.
All right, thank you so much for your input, KG. And
Thank
Debuho? Debuho, are you with us?
I'm here. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Please let us know your thoughts about the book and yeah.
So, I read most parts of it, and I think after the actually when after you read the 10 X's, everything else is just a repetition because he gets his message quite early in. And honestly, the first time when I saw the topic at the last Dr. Mama, it felt like when remember the book that I recommended, and you're like, oh no, and I'm like, oh, not another slave driver overproductive kind of book. But and it was honestly, I took a long time to get to it and to read it. But I think what what I like is that you get the three principles right at the end. And when I thought discipline, I thought, oh my God, I don't have discipline. You know, I don't do regiment. I'm not, every time I think discipline, I think monotony. And I think my brain is going to get bored. But he also then outlines that that's not what it means. But what it was great for me is that I actually started doing a few things that I wanted to build in as a culture of discipline. And I mean, I and I realized over time with some I've failed, but I keep going back. And maybe that's when you read books about discipline and you're not disciplined, you can be a giver, you can give up easily because it builds over years. It's not something that, you know, you do it immediately. And I think, funny enough, yesterday I was saying that if you don't do something consistently, it sort of dies easily. So against all odds, you always, the first thing you got to do is show up for yourself. But he also goes then beyond just showing up, because when you look at the mountaineers, one showed up, but it's also then he takes it to the next level of how do you show up, how do you plan, and how do you um and I mean, it's also like come rain or shine. You know, a few months in a year I live in Cape Town, and I prefer to live by the beach on Muller Point. And I always say, you know, some people are so amazing. Even when there's a storm, when I wouldn't go out to even get groceries or bread, you see people jogging. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you do that? I'm bothered getting bread, but you're jogging. And I always say, I wish I had that kind of discipline that, you know, whatever season it is, they the people that kind of do that. And I had to think, I personally have my own chart that I put up where I can actually see it every time I walk in my office of the 6 things that I want to achieve, my 6 long-term goals. What am I doing this month? What am I doing 3 months? What am I doing 3 weeks? And what do I want to achieve and I'm much easier on myself. I'm like Scott. When the days are not good, I'm like, you know what, if I do one goal, it's fine. I'm getting there. So it was quite I think that's one thing that I've got to like figure out of all the big goals, what is the one thing that I need to actually do consistently, no matter what, you know? And because once you build that in your DNA, it then starts replicating in other parts of our lives. And I kind of like that, you know, come what may, that is gonna be uh, the thing being. And I also like the empirical creativity, you know. And it came back, I think we constantly talk about data here, even though it sometimes can feel like a futuristic thing or something that is not within our knowledge skill, where you think, oh, the digital people always figure out data. And data keeps coming up as something that you need to learn to master. You know, it's like it's a language of the future that I feel we're not taking serious enough. And I think last year when I started a concept business during lockdown, and one of the first things that somebody told me was that business plans are no longer necessary. People finance tested concepts, you know, which also linked with the whole thing about you don't fire the cannon, fire the bullets first. So I was like, oh my God. So everything you do, you sort of need a sandbox to test it and before you go big. So that also helped with the business that I've got a retail business that I'm also scaling up. So that kind of helped with I was nervous. I was anxious about how am I going to do this. You know, I've got this big audacious plan, but how do I do it now? What do I act on first? You know, what am I good at? And I've sort of said, you know, test small aspects of the business and move on and test. So I like that reminder, which also kind of felt like you know the saying that luck happens when preparation meets opportunity, and I felt like he just took that and rephrased it. That's simply that. But he also then goes a bit into detail about what does preparation look like. You know, how do you prepare for sunny days? How do you prepare even when you have how do you prepare for rainy days, but also how do you prepare when you have sunny days? Because we tend to forget when everything is good, you tend to forget that there's a probability of a disaster that might just happen. I was a bit uncomfortable with the idea that you really have to think about bad days, because you always think if I think badly, then bad things will happen, because that's where my mindset, that's where my focus sits. But the fact that it says like productive paranoia, which I don't know how to turn paranoia into productivity. I'm like a positive go, 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 go person. The minute I get paranoid, I get paralyzed. So I'm like, how do you get productive and paranoid at the same time? So that for me is like a bit of a challenge that if I had to take anything from this book that I would have to deal with, that would be that. And I felt like a lot of things that you were saying, I was like, oh, I mean, the quotes that I like, but I kind of felt like you rephrased a lot from 48 Laws of Power or the Sun Tzu, The Art of War, a lot. So a lot of wisdom is not new wisdom. It felt like it's redone. But I also like the Morse versus Amundsen idea. I even shared this with, I've got two friends that are planning to go mount the Himalaya. Another one wants to do the Grand Slam. And I look at the way they think. I mean, my friend was like, oh, come to the Himalaya with me. I'm like, why would I want to do that? Like, why would I want to mount a mountain? Like, let it be, you know? But I see that their discipline and their practice and, and also it's come rain or shine. They do that because they know that it's death, it's preparation up front. And once they get through that, by the time you start summiting the mountain, you should have been prepared. You can't like start planning on the day and they work with people that are really, really experienced and people gain reputation on that. So I thought it was actually quite interesting that if I'm a Scot, how do you, and I think there's no like how do you become the other guy and start training or your mind in business when conditions are harsh? How do you become that consistency? I think it's a challenge because it's nice to do it the first week or 2 weeks, and after a while it's hard, and especially if you're working with teams, because you get people that won't be as disciplined as you are after you read the book. So I think that would be, if you're a startup like probably most of us in this room, that is a challenge of how do you get everybody else to perform at that level. How do you manage down that people actually are on the same level, because you can end up being a slave driver if you're like that. Like if you're a 10x leader and you don't have a 10x team, how do you get them to a 10x team? And I think I kind of felt like that was a gap in the book, in his concept, is that that was missing, because he looks at only CEOs. He doesn't look at the teams that these guys have to work with and how they get them there. But generally, I was pleasantly surprised after I read it. It wasn't a bad book. It was a good book.
Okay, thank you so much. Angie's hand is up. Angie, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I really relate to what the Boho is saying about the paranoia, but for me, it was also a reminder about this fast, everything get it done. And then when you are into business, because I'm also transitioning in my business, and you want to go with everything you have and just go for it. I think the world is constantly telling us, just go for it with everything you have. But no, I think there's also wisdom in testing the waters and then just try it little by little. And there's also like, I think it's not about being pessimistic or like everything is gonna go bad and wrong and down the drain, but it's just to be cautious perhaps, and wisdom. And once again for me, because I'm usually that kind of person that I expect things very quickly, and then I'm perhaps very hard on myself, like when things don't go as fast as I want. But for me, it was really a reminder, take your time. Good things take time to build consistency, discipline, work on those areas. The results, they don't get there fast. Just take your time. For me, and also about those bullets, just test the waters little by little, see what it works, see what it sticks, and then make the changes. But it doesn't have to be on the spot. So yeah, I really agree with the book. On now, we have a lot left to do the work, like a lot of questions in our heads and how to do the practical part of it, right? So yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Angie. And then we'll have KG after KG, Miss Lolo. KG, your hand is up.
to talk about the fact that I'm picking up preparation and discipline, right? But at the same time, what I'm also afraid of is sometimes one may be quick to get the system off working and you end up being in a silo of that discipline and not being able to explore other things. Because you may find that, okay, this thing got you here, but for you to progress even further, you may find yourself that, okay, you are now stuck with this discipline. It's even difficult to move and adapt to a changing environment. I'll say this. I'll make it a practical example. Joining this kind of spaces where we talk about books and stuff, yes, it's a good move, but you may find yourself that one would be stuck in terms of, I did this, but now you need the practicality of it. You did not incorporate the practical part of this thing into your stuff. So probably what I would want to say, my take home would be, in as much as, yes, you prepare, yes, you discipline ensures results, because at least chances are you'll be predictable in going towards what you want to achieve. But also, don't find yourself being stuck in, we have been doing it like this for many years, because many corporations, is because of we have been doing it like this for many years that they fail to adapt with the changing conditions. Now, the kind of entrepreneurs that have come up ever since the COVID period, they were quick enough to change and adapt to the changing climate. There was no, we have been doing this, we will have to wait, we have to, yes, I know we still need to do that, but I was just wondering, we must not just be cautious, just adapt and say, this is the discipline and the formula that works, and find ourselves having been stuck when the thing changes. One CEO from Nokia said, when they were closing, there's a statement I think on Google. He was saying it's not that we were not prepared, it's just that the climate changed very quick and our competitors were ready. So you wouldn't necessarily want yourself to be stuck, though there's discipline, but you don't want yourself to be stuck on it. Just be open-minded to make a few changes should it need. Kelebo, thank you.
Thank you, KG. Lolo? Is Lolo with us? Dr. Roche, while Lolo gets ready, are you ready to go? Your take on the book.
Yeah, thanks, Shama. You're doing well. I think for me, I mean, I love Jim Collins's books because they are more. He's basically converting a research that has been done. I mean, I think there were. Just need to look at that. There were about 20,000 or so companies that were researched, about 7,000 historical documents that were reviewed. So that's quite a lot. So, I mean, Jim Collins for me has always been a go-to person when I look for instruments. You know, if I look for instruments, if I look for models, if I look for type of thinking, you know, and of course, he's also a great storyteller. I think most of what the examples that he put there, summiting also, you know, the whole summiting, eating dolphins. But I think for me, at the core of the book is why do others thrive in a crisis while others don't? And I think, I mean, out of everything else, there's quite a lot of things in the book. I think for me, really, and especially now that we're in COVID, I think for me, that's what really stands out. Why is it that others thrive in COVID and others don't? And I thought it's sort of like one of those rude awakening books that says it's not always going to be rosy. And you always have to, I mean, as an auditor by training, you always have to have safety measures. It's not always going to be sunshine. It's going to rain at some point. Always make sure that you have the umbrella. There might be fire. Do you have a fire extinguisher type of a thing? So I think for me, it's about that. It's about the fact that you need to have certain things in business that will take you through the good and the bad days, because you are going to have the bad days. That's a given. And I always say to entrepreneurs that you are going to fail one way or another. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to, lose a deal. You're going to make a judgment error. That's a given. It's part of, you'll have a blueprint, but you're going to make your own mistakes. We'll give you a blueprint. And I think for me, what Jim Collins has done with this book is, it's sort of like a reminder. I mean, some of the concepts here are not fairly new, but I think it's sort of like a reminder to say, chaos is going to happen. I mean, if you look at, for instance, for me, the 5 fundamental things that I also take from the book is that uncertainty is permanent. The business environment is uncertain. No one predicted COVID. No one predicted 9/11. No one, well, some people may have. I remember there was a professor who actually predicted the 2008 financial crisis. He predicted that, but not so many people were able to predict that. And that chaos is normal in business. I mean, we always say, the first thing that gets taught at business school is that the business environment is always changing. It doesn't stay static. It's impossible that it will stay static. It always changes. And I remember in our first class, we were told that our degree will be obsolete 18 months after completing it. So 18 months after you finish your master's program, they tell you it's going to be obsolete because the environment, the business environment would have changed. I did my master's in 2006. By the time I finished it in 2008, the financial crisis happened, and a whole lot of things changed. So I think for me, what the book reminds me of is precisely that uncertainty is permanent. They always say, if there's anything that's certain, is change. Change is certain, but also that the worst things will always be around the corner, one way or another. And that chaos it's part and parcel of. In fact, there's a book, I can't remember, it talks about the 4-year, I don't know whether it's a 4-year or 2-year cycle, 4-year cycle, which talks about every 4 years, the world experiences a shift. There's always, like, for instance, the Y2K, 9/11, financial crisis, COVID, and all those kind of things. So it talks about, I can't remember what the number is, but it talks about the fact that the world, we are now in for instance, the 4IR, for instance, and the disruption that the 4IR is bringing. So it's sort of what Jim Collins is saying is, uncertainty and all these cycles, they're part and parcel of business, and pace yourself, and don't try and think that you'll have sudden great fortune, and instability, it's something that will always be there. And I think for me, that's what I'm taking from the book, that how then do you build your business with shock absorbers, knowing that the road is not always going to be smooth. There will be detours on your journey, and some of the detours will have potholes on it. Have you built a car that will also withstand the potholes? Because there's going to be all these things. Somebody who does a very good job of this as well is Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss, if you have read both of his books, the Mentor's book and the other one, he drums that philosophy that you always have to shock yourself. You always have to, don't be too comfortable. It's ridiculous things, like he would say, he would, in a year, he would deliberately sleep on the floor for a week or two, right? So that he trains his body not to be too comfortable, because, you never know what might happen to the world. This has got some Zen Buddha thing, But he says, this whole thing of fasting, for instance, fasting is part of shocking your body so that your body doesn't get comfortable. It always, be shocked a bit to say, wake up, life is not always this smooth sailing. And I think in a long-winded way, that's what Jim Collins is saying. He says, are you building a business that has got those shock absorbers? So you want to be able to stress test it, right? So I think for me, that was the main thing. And of course, for me, the favorite chapter is the 20-mile march. I think for me, that was like, pace yourself, avoid trying to grow exponentially, pace yourself instead of running, instead of running, faster, do your 20-mile march every day. And I think this is what I always say to entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurship is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a journey, this thing. You're going to do this. If you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, this is a journey for the rest of your life. There is no retirement. There is no, I'm stopping, I'm no longer doing this, da, 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 da. It's a journey that it's going to take the rest of your life. So if you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, you want to pace yourself. You don't want to rush it. You want to pace yourself. So if you're going to say, I'm going to be on this earth maybe until I reach 90 years, right? And I'm going to be doing this for 90 years, right? You want to have those milestones worked out and not try and rush it, and build for the long haul. I think for me, there's a return of luck, which initially when I read return on luck, that concept for me was a bit confusing, but I discussed it with someone else and then they explained it to me, and then I got it. And when I went back to read it again, it made quite a lot of sense. And I think for me, that's really, there's so many things that stood out. But I think for me, that's the main thing, that after COVID, there will be climate change, which is another crisis. There might be, we're still in the middle of the 4IR. There's climate change coming. There might be other disasters that are coming, but do we have the discipline to, like a car that's got shock absorbers? When you get into a pothole, have you built this car in such a way that it can come out resilient? So yeah, I think for me, those are the things. It reminded me of Tim Ferriss's Tribe of Mentors and the other one. And then it also reminded me of, there's a book, quite an amazing book by Stephen Johnson on innovation, called Farsighted. And in Farsighted, he talks about, and I'm looking at the whole example of going to the thing, about preparing yourself, preparing. And in Farsighted, Stephen Johnson gives an example of how the Navy SEALs, the American Navy SEALs, captured Osama bin Laden and executed him and took his body out within about 20 minutes or less even, and how they practiced that exercise over and over and over again. So they tried to simulate even the weather conditions. So they looked at, if he's in Afghanistan, what is the weather temperature in Afghanistan like? And then they looked in the US and they looked for a similar weather pattern in the US. And they went there and they looked for a house and they simulated the house. When they got the when they got the tip of where Osama might be, they took pictures of the house and they built a similar structure. Obviously, they couldn't see what's inside, but they built a similar house looking at the pictures, and they simulated how they would attack, when they would attack, and how many planes they would use. And if one plane was shot, how they would react to that, and how they would go in and what they would look for. And they also simulated how the height of Osama bin Laden, and when they capture him and they kill him, how will they measure? It was so ridiculous. How would they measure his height and know that this is the right person? And how would they carry him out of the house into the helicopter and out there? And for me, and how, if things would go wrong and whatever. And for me, that was like what Jim Collins is talking about. He's saying, build this business, and as you are building it, try and simulate if something could go wrong, how would you respond? So yeah, I found that to be quite fascinating. So yeah, I loved it. Is it practical? I think it's practical. Is it relevant? Absolutely. I think we are living in a crisis situation as we speak. So absolutely 10 out of 10, it's relevant. Will it get you results? Maybe 7 or 8 out of 10. And I think I like what Tebogo is saying. And I think this is my struggle with Jim Collins's books, right? He's got this research team and he's researching these companies that have got amazing executive teams. So of course, I mean, these things will work if you have that exco team, you know, but if you're a startup and you don't have the luxury of that executive team, like all these things are good, but like, can you really pull them off, you know? So it's good because he's researching well-established companies and with well-resourced teams. And so, I mean, is it prescriptive or is it descriptive? I think for me, it's more descriptive than prescriptive. He's basically saying, I researched these guys and this is what they say, right? So he's descriptive, but I don't think it's prescriptive. I don't think he's saying, therefore, this is what you should do, because I don't think it's as easy as that, especially for entrepreneurs, a startup, building companies. I don't think it's as prescriptive as that. But, you know, having said that, I think it's a good resource to have so that it sort of shapes your thinking. So that's why I like his books. It gives you the models, the tools, the stories, you know, and that you can use as you scale up your business. So yeah, that's my long story short. Oh, that's my short story long. Oh wait.
Okay. While you're still on the hot seat, I'm not so sure if you've touched on it, but please tell us if the structure of the book affected the message in any way for you.
Look, I think I like how he writes. I like how he writes and how he titles his chapters 10xers, you know. So I like the structure. I mean, his books are research books. So I mean, somebody I was discussing this with somebody. He was like, no, man, I mean, half the book is research notes and the other half is the book,
Exactly.
you know. So it's like, yeah, it's all this notes, research, whatever. And then maybe half of it is, okay, this is the actual book, you know. But I mean, as an academic, for me, I can't complain. I mean, the more notes you have, for me, it works. So for me, the structure worked. The story, I love the stories. So I love the fact that in most of the chapters, he starts with the stories. Is Steve Jobs humble? I don't think Steve Jobs was humble. You know, so some of the companies, funny me. I mean, if you remember back to when he wrote the book Good to Great, I mean, and he mentioned all these companies. And for me, to my point exactly, that his books are descriptive and not prescriptive. When he wrote Good to Great, and he came up with all these theories, level 5, flywheel concept, blah, blah, blah. And after that, after the Good to Great book came the financial crisis. And most of the companies, Fannie Mae and all those things, they went bankrupt after the financial crisis. And then people went back to him and said, yeah, you said these are great companies. Look at where they are now. They are gone, right? And then he wrote a book, How the Mighty Have Fallen. So I love the fact that, you know, he's always willing to say, look, I might be wrong. I might not necessarily have all the answers, but I love the structure of the book. I mean, I love how he tackles the chapters. In certain instances, some chapters are too long. He gets too academic. He goes too deep. When he's like Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell also gets way too, like he detours, and you forget where he was going, and then he comes back to the point long after you've gotten lost. So, but I loved the structure of the book.
Okay. Angie, what about diagrams?
Yeah, they put me off from the beginning, as you were saying, that the first pages that you go and you wonder like, hey, the book is loaded. Is it gonna be like this? All diagrams and amounts and this. It was so technical at the beginning that I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through. But yeah, you keep on pushing, but then and to find that that meat, you know, whatever is more substantial or whatever it speaks to you. But yeah, it's like I felt like I had to go through a lot. And like the Woho was saying, it was like kind of repetitive. I felt like, okay, you could have put everything in just 3 pages and, you know, go to the point. I'm also that kind of person that it just goes straight and then I'll get it. I kind of get lost or distracted with a lot of details. So I enjoy the lessons, I enjoy the points, but I found it a bit difficult to really get to the point.
All right, thank you. And then KG, please turn your camera on. How did the structure of the book affect the message for you? Thank you.
I'm camera shy, guys.
How we all are.
Okay. Come on. No,
Pushay.
for me, particularly what I'm camera shy. So no, what worked for me, particularly from the onset on the first chapter where he gives the layout on how the research was, they approached the research, and then how did they choose the companies, and in terms of what they looked at in with regards to investment, how when you invested this particular money, so that did it for me, because now when you approach the entire thing, you know how they approached this, the research that they came to present to us. Yeah, that's just about it.
And then
But
rating
also,
it.
I wanna, you know, with books like this, particularly where we're talking discipline, and I'm thinking we may leave this space and with the mindset that, okay, I got what he was saying, I got what he was saying, and only to find out it only registered with the whatever quotes that we read from the book. They only registered in our minds, but we have not come to grasp the essence of what it takes to build that kind of discipline. I would say for him, or for these entrepreneurs, these 10Xers, for them, it's a mindset that they have imbibed. It was not just a series of quotes that they've come to know from Lao Tzu or whoever books that they've read. So for us also, our take home should also be cautious that whatever that is not prescriptive, that whatever that we take home from this book, we should also make sure that we get it within a specific mindset, because it's one thing to grasp it with all the quotes, it's one thing to know which page, which story stood out, but we don't imbibe the mindset that it takes to go to a 10Xer as an entrepreneur.
While you're still there, if you were to rate the book out of 10, 1 being worse and 10
it's
being...
gonna be unfair. It's gonna be unfair for me.
How so?
No, again, I didn't read all of it.
Oh, you
so
didn't
I'm
finish the
just
book.
gonna do all of it, yeah.
Okay, you're allowed to sit this one out.
All right, thank
Blondie,
you.
are you with us? Thank you, KG. Thank you. Blondie? Blondie is not here. Stembile? Is it Stembile? Did I get the name correctly?
Hi, sorry. Hi,
Okay.
sorry. I got the invitation last minute, so I did not read the book. So I'm just today, because it was an invite from Dr. Mamakulu, so I just wanted to see what the...
Okay, thank you. That's fine. And then who else? Who am I missing? I don't want to miss out. I don't want to leave anyone out.
I think, is it for rating, to rate the book?
Yes, before you rate the book, you can rate the book, and then I know, is it Teboho? I know you already said it reminded you of Art of War. Is that some parts from some of the quotes?
It reminded me of the 48 laws of power and the art of war.
Okay.
Yeah, it reminded me of those. It felt like he had taken, so I'm busy looking at my notes. It felt like he had taken some ideas from that. So it wasn't, I think I'll take 2 points from maybe not creativity, but aggregating it nicely. I like that in the right, like if you had to read one chapter about 10Xs, you sort of got the principles of what he's talking about. And the 10X companies, they were also like not multinational companies that you'll easily recognize. I even put a note that, I mean, we all know Bill Gates, but then, and I actually thought I hated Southwestern. The experience was so horrific. I wouldn't want to have a company like that. But it works. I mean, low cost carriers always work, no matter how shabby they are, you know. So I'll give it an 8 because even though I didn't finish reading it, when I got into it, I thought I would want to read this. And now that I think you guys also helped it go from like a 7 for me to an 8, because when you're speaking about the principles that you applied, you know, and I was like, even just reading this book, I thought, oh, 20 minutes. I suppose that is possible, you know, if there's going to be consistency, that is possible. And I actually have an accountability group that I sit with every alternative Wednesday. And I'm going to say to them at the next one that for me to achieve my goals, I'm going to incorporate this as a principle, you know, the 20-mile thing as a principle in terms of how do I show up for myself and actually achieve things every day, you know, and start thinking about that. I think, yeah, in terms of it's actionable, it's possible, it's actionable. I like the sandbox idea, and I'm going to think about how do I then incorporate it in a retail business? Like, how do you stress test a retail business? Because there's so many scenarios, and that's what insurance is there for, right? For those those is possible. So actually, my first job was in insurance as a risk analyst for an underwriting company. And I've actually I'm so built to think about risk. Sometimes risks happen. I'm like, oh, I already thought about that, but I think I need to sort of think from an insurance point of view, like what could go wrong, but what also could go wrong that an insurance company could not cover. Yeah. So I think I'll give it an 8. I think if you think hard about it and you really want to work on your business, they could work on a small scale, and it is possible. And I think, yeah, and I'm gonna continue reading it. It feels like it, and also because it repeats itself. So maybe if I do audiobooks, so it will be easy to listen to because it's the first chapter, the 10Xs you need to read, the first few chapters you need to actually read. But I think the other ones will be easier to just listen to because it's stories, it's narratives, it's repetitive. So I'll give it an 8 as a doable, as a thing, and I'll take away 2 for lack of. It's not very highly creative, and as I say, if you're a startup and you don't have that team that's there, that could be a challenge.
Okay, Angie, I think you'd said 7 out of 10.
Yes, I think there was just too much there. I said I just like straight to the point, and yeah, I think because I would give him 7 out of 7 out of 10 because those things resonated with me. Those principles, perhaps self-discipline, consistency, resilience, prepare for the worst kind of approach, you know, paranoia, and then test the waters. You know, don't go full head on it. Just start with the bullets. And then also grasp the opportunities when luck is on your side, just grasp the opportunity. So those are the kind of things that actually I'm taking away, but I think there was too much fluff, a lot of, it was just straight to the point. I like it straight, direct.
Yeah. Yeah. And then for me, is it me? Should I go or someone else wants to go? Okay, so for me, I really enjoyed the book, but those graphs and those numbers, and remember Dr. Roche was like, someone said it was like a research book. I was like, so many numbers. But besides that, if I had to restructure it, I would remove all of those graphs and reduce all of those numbers. But I'd rate it. I really loved this book. I really loved it. I think an 8 out of 10. And then for me, again, the part that really stood out again, that I'm just being reminded of, I don't know where to find it in my notes, the part where he says that these leaders know what to do when things are going very well in their businesses. I think as entrepreneurs, we're wired to think about what are we going to do when things go wrong? But what about when things are really, really going well? I think for me, that's something to take back and go back and read about that and know what to do when we are well. You know, when the money is really good, do we continue doing that thing that we're doing very well? I think that is what that's also my take home. And then Dr. Roche, anything from your side?
Yeah, I would give it an 8 as well. I think, because of, I mean, for me personally, it's sort of when we decided, I mean, the book came out a while ago, but I think as a business person, on your journey, you have to pass through this book because it's sort of like a reminder of the turbulence that this journey is about. So I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It's a research book, but I think I love the tools. I think I love the tools, and the tools, as Professor Clay Christensen will say, the theories will always remain timeless. The theories will always remain timeless. The environments will always change, but the theories will remain timeless. So yeah, an 8. Why 8, not 10? I think certain things, to Angie's point, certain things, I think at some point they did, like I said, they did the Malcolm Gladwell thing where he just detours and you just get like, okay, but I could have put that as a footnote, so yeah. But I also think, to Tebogo's point, for me, really, it's great if you have a great exco team, but and it's okay. Maybe that's the audience that it's targeted at, and I think there's nothing wrong with it. And it might obviously work there, but I mean, for startups, for those who are still trying to build their businesses, yeah, maybe not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for me, are you done? And then for me, the book, I think when I was reading it, it reminded me a lot of Grit by Angela Duckworth. How to be consistent and keep going step by step, bit by bit, knowing when to slow down and when to increase the pace. So for me, it reminded me of Grit by Angela.
All right. I think, I don't know, should we talk about the next book?
Before that,
yes.
What's the book that you mentioned, something about mentoring?
Oh, Tribes of Mentors. Tribes of Mentors. It's a Bible.
Is it readable?
Yeah, no, it is. So by Tim Ferriss. So what he's done, it's sort of written like interview questions. So it's sort of like a conversation. He asked us an interview, and then the person. So what Tim Ferriss does is he's, I think, one of the leading podcasters in the US at some point. I don't know if he's still now. So he interviews quite a lot of people. I mean, in this book, he interviews Oprah, Susan Cain. So he interviews quite a lot of people. I don't know. And then he transcribes those interviews into book format. So as you are reading it, it's as if you are listening to a podcast. So it's written like that. Okay. But in there, you do get the sense. I mean, he talks about how he shocks. I mean, people eat dolphins, and now he decides I'm gonna sleep on the floor for a week or so that I can shock my body. Does not become. It's like privileged people's have the luxury of doing those type of things. To say I'm gonna challenge myself and not eat for a week and see what happens. Like, who does that? Like, really?
Yeah.
So you can see someone who's on the extreme end of privilege that trying to bring themselves to be like normal human beings. Like, oh my word, like really?
Yeah.
You know, like I want to stay 24 hours without sleeping and see what happens. Like, okay. So it's those type. But he does that quite a lot. I mean, he's into this. He does this thing with his body where he would put eyes like on his body and he wants to see how his body will react, type of a thing, which is what Jim Collins talks about in the book. Like you put yourself in all these stress test situations and see how you'll respond. So yeah.
And then Jim Collins, he talked about a book called The Last Place on Earth by Ronald Hanford, where they go into depth about that Manson and Scott thing. I really want to read that book. I hope it will be worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think if there are no last thoughts, I think that's it from my side.
Okay, thanks. So the next book is, okay, so we have 2 books before the end of the year. I was hoping we can get an interview with an author. I managed to squeeze one, but it's a very tight thing. Chris Tegeta, he's in the US. He wrote a book, The Unintended Consequences of Technology. So he just launched it a couple of weeks ago, a week or so ago, but it's still fairly new. So I'm gonna try and see if we can't get it. I'll go to Exclusive Books and see how long it will take for us to get the book. If it's gonna take forever, I'll then talk to him and see if we can, maybe all of us contribute, and maybe I'll pay him and then you can reimburse me and then I can get the book and see if we can get it at a quicker time. And maybe that can be the last book for the year. So in December, maybe first week or so in December or so, we can then have an interview with him, a discussion. Hopefully we would have had enough time to read the book. I will sort of share the details on the email by tomorrow. I just spoke to him today. Actually, I sort of got that reference from Blondie. She was asking, she was responding to my WhatsApp thing about tonight's book review. And she said, have you read this book? And then I'm like, oh, wow, the title looks interesting. And then she was like, it's written by a Black author. So I looked at him, no, I know this guy. I know this guy personally, right? Oh, he wrote a book. I didn't know he wrote a book. Yeah. So yeah, we're with him. I met him at the TED conference in Arusha 2017. Funny guy, nice guy. So yeah, and then I popped him a message and he was like, great, let's do this. Just let me know how the logistics will work. So I just need to get people who are raising their hands to say, please order for me. I'll work out the price. If you're all keen, let me know and I'll work out the price and then maybe we can see how we can get the book over and maybe we can read it and have a discussion it will depend on how long it will take for us to get the book across. And if it's taking longer, we might then prescribe another book for the last book of the year and then maybe move it to maybe January and then we can have a session with him. He's quite keen to come talk to us. So yeah.
Wow.
I assume everybody's on board.
Mm-hmm.
The Unintended Consequences of Technology. That's the name of the book. I'll share the write-up later on tomorrow. But the next book for November is Atomic Habits.
I've always wanted to read that book. It's time.
Yep. So I got it a few days ago. I've read the first chapter, the introduction chapter. It's a good book. I think it's a good book. Devil, I know you don't like this type of books, but yeah, I think you'll find this quite refreshing. I think
I'm actually thinking
the opposite. It's the opposite of great by choice. It's not like highly half of the book is research, the other half is it's actually
Okay.
quite stories and yeah.
And
Is
the-
it
and-
readable, Dr. Roche? Is it readable?
Very,
Okay.
very, yeah. So yeah, that's the next one.
I'll call Exclusive Books tomorrow and check if they have it in store.
Yeah, no, it's readily available. So just find out from them. But this one, I looked for something that's readily available. So this is the book for November, mid-November. And then I will, in the process, try and make arrangements for the December for the last book. And then, yeah, and then we do a Christmas function. Devo, sorry, you wanted to say something?
No. Oh, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, I see you have popped the link also. Awesome, thank you. So that's the book from on Deborah's. Some people are quick, man. So she just heard the name and she was
I
like,
actually,
that's academic.
I'm a student and I'm partially Chinese, so I've actually been checked on the free book resources if the book is available or not. I buy books by choice, not yeah. So I checked the unintended consequences, and the minute that you said it's a personal friend, I was like, okay, I'll buy this one because it's a friend. And this one I just checked; it's available as a free resource. I'm getting the free version of the book and the audio, but yeah,
Is it available?
it's always good.
Oh wow.
Huh? The what?
Is it available as a free resource? Is it available as a free resource?
Yeah, yeah, all books are almost available as a free resource.
Hey, you guys must share these things, eh?
I'm sharing. I'm not saying you should use the link, so I'm putting a disclaimer: do not use this link. Let me say it.
Okay. Thank you.
Because
Eva.
I'm not supposed. It's pirating, basically.
Okay, no, that's fine. Don't pirate,
But you
guys.
can.
We are buying it from Chris, all of us.
Yeah, no, the Chris Kete, I'll buy definitely because it's a
All of
personal
us.
friend.
NG, you are buying. KG,
Yeah.
we are buying. Shama, we are all buying Chris's book. We are reading it, and we are inviting him to come either end of this year or in Jan, depending on how soon the book arrives.
Yeah, and encourage people to buy those Christmas gifts for their friends. To tell them it's
Yes.
such a great, because if we're getting a lot of them,
Yes.
people, yeah, we could even buy them as gifts for our friends. So
Yes.
I'll commit
And
to ordering 2 copies.
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm good. 2 minutes to close. Shama, well done. Great session. Yeah. Last words, guys, before we wrap up. Angie, thanks for joining us. Your first session. I know you were joining us on the other side. Now you are inside. You're not on the other side, you're inside. So that's awesome. Hey, KG, welcome back, man. We have missed you. Hey, now suddenly talking to us, you feel shy talking to us. Like, what happened? You were there on day one. Now you are shy. No, man. And as always, Devo, thanks so much for coming through and yeah, being thought-provoking as always. And and Blondie, we are obviously looking forward to you also coming through formally.
I look forward to the next session and the next session after that. So thank you for the invitation, although it was a bit short notice.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. See you sometime mid-November. So yeah, we are on James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. So this is a good thing for January New Year's resolutions. So just make sure that you've got the right habits for New Year's resolutions. Awesome. Thank you so much and have an awesome evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate it.